One nation, one legislation. India's ruling BJP pushes for a uniform civil code, but can a single set of laws work in such a religiously diverse country? I'm Rabia Sandal, and today's Newsmaker is India's UCC. When the BJP came to power in 2019, they made several promises, but three stood out. First, the abrogation of Article 370, removing Jammu and Kashmir's special status under the Indian Constitution. Second, to resolve the decades-long temple or mosque dispute in Ayodhya. And finally, the introduction of a Uniform Civil Code, or UCC. Well, the ruling party thinks they've done the first two, and now plans for the third look to be underway.
Uniform Civil Code.
We have always been committed to implement Uniform Civil Code. We are still committed, and we will implement this.
Well, in Article 44 of the Indian Constitution, it says the state shall endeavor to secure for its citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. But what does that really mean? And can it work in a country that is so religiously diverse? In essence, it is saying the country should have one set of secular laws applying to all of India's religious communities in matters pertaining to marriage, divorce, adoption, inheritance, and all other personal issues. Right now, most every religion has its own set of laws when it comes to personal matters, but New Delhi's High Court is backing calls for a uniform civil code. As it argues, India is becoming more homogenous. But is that really the case? Let's take a look at the demographics.
India is home to 1/6 of the world's population and is also one of the most religiously diverse. Of the nearly 1.4 billion people living in the country, almost 80% are Hindu, 14% Muslim, 2% Christian, and 1.7% Sikh.
So with those demographics, can a uniform civil code really be applied in India without causing damaging fallout? Joining me now to debate that from New Delhi is Sudhanshu Mittal. He's a senior member of India's ruling BJP party. From Lucknow is Rabia Sandal. She's the Secretary General of the All India Muslim Women's Personal Law Board. And Alok Prasanna Kumar is in Bengaluru. He is the co-founder and director of the Vidhi Karnataka Institute. Thanks all so much for being with us. Alok, let me start with you. Given that passing the UCC was one of the core campaign promises of the BJP, and knowing that they were, able to controversially pass the other two core promises, do you foresee this UCC being pushed through now, even though the framers of India's constitution promised it would not be imposed by force?
I'm not in politics. I'm a lawyer and somebody who studies the constitution. But let me just say that even if there was a good faith effort, any party, not just the BJP, would find it very, very difficult to even draft a uniform civil code, let alone pass it or push it through in whatever way possible. Because let us not forget, any uniform civil code is going to affect every one of India's 1.3 billion people. It's not about just the minorities or anyone. And this is an incredibly diverse country. It is going to be very, very difficult to try and create a uniform system which works for people who earn less than a dollar a day, and also who earn more than $10,000 a day, and who also live in such different circumstances. You have tribal communities who are happy following their own customs. You have a Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, Sikh, Jain, who all have very, very different customs. There is a broad common legal framework which says how your rights will be enforced and so on. But a uniform system where everybody follows exactly one law on all aspects of personal life is very, very difficult to draft. Then an effort was made by the Law Commission of India in the year 2018 and 19, and they said that this is neither necessary nor feasible at this moment of time. So I believe it's not something which can easily be pushed forward. It is, in fact, a very, very difficult undertaking, and even drafting it is going to be.
But Jammu and Kashmir was also supposed to be an extremely difficult issue, and they forced it through. So Sudhanshu Mittal, first up, let me ask you, why is the BJP doing this?
Uniform Civil Code is a promise which the Constitution made to its citizens. Article 44 of the Indian Constitution says the state shall endeavor to implement a uniform civil code. So it's not BJP, it is what the framers of the Indian Constitution wanted. They wanted a common civil code for every citizen of this country. Because for us, the constitutional values are more important than personal beliefs.
Okay, but the Constitution
Because
also
the
provided
Constitution-
for special status for Jammu and Kashmir, but that's been taken away. So
No. Allow me. This is again a misnomer. The Constitution gave a temporary provision for a special status. It wasn't meant to be a permanent status. But there were vested interests which made it permanent. So we'll digress. If we go to Kashmir, we'll digress. Let's come down to this. I just heard the argument that for such a diverse and such a huge country with a population of 1.6 billion or 5 billion, how would this be possible? You know that the Hindu civil code has been amended umpteen number of times. A code which is followed by more than 75% of India's population. That has been amended for the betterment of people, and nobody has protested on that. Look at the succession.
right,
We've
but it was the
amended
decision in
succession.
that
Look
case
at
of the Hindu population.
No, it was not the decision of the Hindu population. It was the decision of the parliament. The parliament did it. There's
The
no
BJP
population which
representing a
decides.
majority Hindu population.
No, we were not. This was done by the Congress. No, I mean, these are not. Let's not distort facts. The amendments to the Hindu civil code were made and done by the Congress government. But these were all progressive legislations. So the society accepted it. So if 1.2 billion people can accept it, then 1.4 billion people can also accept it.
Okay, Mr.
And
Mittal,
we are
I need
talking
to
about
ask
a
you this
uniform
then.
Civil code.
Okay.
We're not talking about a Hindu civil code.
Okay, understood. Tell me though, how does the BJP actually justify its support now for these anti-conversion laws that actually stop mixed religious marriages, while at the same time they're calling for a universal code that would grant everyone the right to marry anyone, regardless of their faith or what community they subscribe to?
The conversion and the anti-conversion is only limited to allurement or forcible conversions. The demand of BJP, or for that matter in this country, conversion is at will. But if it is through coercion or through allurement or through threat, then that is when the law has to be enacted to protect such kind of a misdeed.
Okay, I think we have a problem with the connection there.
Or be religion or see religion.
Okay,
it is conversion per se.
Let me turn to Look now. I want to get Rabia's thoughts. Rabia, let me get your thoughts on what you've heard so far on both assessments.
Yes, thank you very much. See, to begin with, I am a Muslim woman and I represent Muslim women who are actually minority within minority in India. So if you ask about my thoughts, we are still confused about the practicality and implementation of Uniform Civil Code. We are hopeful and we are open-minded. We are aware of the fact that there are people who are propagating against the Uniform Civil Code, and there have been many instances. Like if we take the example of the state Goa in India, it is one of the perfect example of following the Uniform Civil Code. So we are hopeful and we are open-minded, but I would like to say that we would like to see the blueprint of the Uniform Civil Code, because we would like to know how the government is going to implement it and how is it going to affect our community. And first of all, we know that our country is very diverse. There are different religion and different communities, tribal community, the indigenous people who are living together. So how is the government going to cope up with this diversification? So
Okay.
if you talk.
Let me ask you this, though, specifically, Robbie, as it was mentioned. I mean, New Delhi's High Court has just, made way for the UCC to pass into law because it's saying that India has become a more homogenous country. Is that true?
Yes, I think people are more acceptable. They are accepting new challenges and they are accepting new laws and
Okay, does that qualify as being a more homogenous country?
Yes, I think so. I agree in it. I
Okay.
agree.
Let me ask Alok then, what you make specifically of the New Delhi High Court's saying that, yeah, we can pass this now because India is not as religiously divided or even really as religiously diverse as may be portrayed, and that it is just one people, nowadays at least, and this kind of blanket law can be applied.
So let me go back to something which Mr. Sudhanshu Mittal mentioned, the Hindu code. Under this law, it's not just Hindus, it includes Sikhs and Jains and Buddhists as well. Except Sikhs have been unhappy for a long time that they have been included into the Hindu code, and they have been asking for a separate legislation to be made applicable to them. It's called the Anand Marriages Act, and various states are now in the process of essentially giving them a separate legislation on this front. Within the Hindu code itself, there is an exception for tribal communities. Large parts of it does not apply to tribal communities. Within the Hindu code itself, different rules apply for property in South Indian South Indian states and in North Indian states. Within the Hindu code, different customs are recognized in different parts of the countries. There may be one law, let me clarify this important point, but it is not a uniform law for all Hindus. Different Hindus have different practices across the country. All that the law says is we will recognize all these practices and we will introduce new provisions of law into it. By no means can you call the Hindu code a uniform law because it preserves the differences between the Hindus themselves. This is a big significant difference
Okay.
from saying there will be only one law. Unless you take that uniformity part of it is what is the serious problem. Now, coming back to the Delhi High
Okay,
Court, the
but
Delhi
before
High
you
Court
go
is
on,
not
actually,
the
we'll
only
come
one.
right back to the
Plenty
Delhi High
of
Court.
courts
I
have
just need
said
to
in
let
the past.
Sudhanshu respond to.
Sure.
I want to. Oh, actually, we've lost his connection. He did have something to say, but his connection is frozen. If we
Okay.
can come back to that.
But
So
can
do
I
go
just
ahead,
finish that
Alok.
point?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Courts have in the past said we should implement a UCC, we should implement a UCC. Unfortunately, courts do not have the first idea of what a UCC is because nobody in 70 years has produced a single draft of what this UCC is going to look like. This is the only law that I sometimes say jokingly, everybody is ready to implement without ever first drafting it, which to me is very bizarre. Everybody says it's a great idea, but nobody places. I understand the concern that Ms. Rabia just pointed out. Nobody has shown us a draft. How can something be implemented without first being drafted or even passed or even being put in the public domain? So in that absence, it doesn't mean anything for the court to say, yeah, go ahead, implement the Uniform Civil Code. That
Okay.
simply doesn't make any sense.
But what I was asking about specifically is they're saying, yeah, go ahead, implement this code, that will make everyone equal under one law. But the court was saying that it's okay to do now because India has become a more homogenous country.
I don't think so, because there were recent statistics which showed the rate of intercaste and interreligious marriages. I don't think it is. The rates are so minimal that you'd think that it's less than 1%. It's so exceptional. Like if you don't have the basic element of intermarriage and intermixing, there was a more recent survey which asked people, how many friends do you have outside of your caste, outside of your religion? The numbers were again minuscule. So I don't think we're moving. I mean, we are less heterogeneous maybe than in the past. I won't say we are more homogeneous because that's still a far way. And homogeneous has an unfortunate connotation for me because it means everyone speaks the same language, eats the same food, has the same cultural identity, has this does not dissent against the government. Homogeneity has these negative connotations in India which are going to be resistant. It's unfortunate that the court used that term to assume that there are no differences. In fact, the differences persist and they're not a bad thing. It makes us stronger as a nation, not weaker.
Okay. Rabia, let me ask you, how dangerous do you think the fallout could be if any form of UCC is actually passed in India? What kind of response could we see from the Indian masses?
I think this could be a threat to our unity, and there could be clashes, religious clashes, and this could be a threat to our unity. I think so.
Okay.
Because there are many people, if you talk about Muslim community, 85% of Muslims are marginalized. Like they are in the typical Hindi or Urdu word, which is known as pasmanda, that they are deprived of education and more opportunities. So I
Okay.
think, yes, that will be a problem.
I'm told we have Sudhanshu back. I know you had a comment you were very eager to make, so I'll let you go now, if you can pick up on where you left off.
Yeah, Mr. Alok has been talking about a Hindu code. I do not know which legislation is he referring to because there are 4 acts. Which act is he talking about? I do not know. So I think
Sorry, the Hindu Succession Act.
misinformation
I
is
was
not
specifically referring to the
what.
Hindu
Yeah.
Succession Act.
Now let us look at the Succession Act, which was amended in 2005. And let me tell you, Alok ji, Hindu Succession Act does not make any distinction. The right to succession for a woman whose spouse or whose parent or whose father, anybody has died intestate, gives them a complete right as equal to that of a man. So there is earlier the Hindu Succession Act, according to the Hindu succession, only the succession's entitlement was for a boy and not for a girl. Now, after the amendment of 2005, every woman is entitled to Hindu succession at par with what is the right of a boy. So we have done away with the distinction between a boy and a girl, and
Okay.
that is what our constitutional provision is, that we shall not discriminate on the grounds of sex.
So, Alok,
So an anomaly in the Hindu system has been corrected by this amendment. We should welcome it and implement it across. Why should a woman of the Muslim woman be deprived of succession when a
okay.
Hindu woman is
So
entitled to
can I
succession?
explain
So
that a
these
little
are
bit?
constitutional provisions.
Sure, Alok,
So
I
can
don't
I
want to get
You know,
too much into
yeah,
detail
because
about the
so
I
laws
just want to say one
themselves.
more thing.
Because, Alok,
Can I
I've
just say
heard
one more
this.
thing?
Hold on. I've heard this from the BJP before, that they say they're actually really striving for equality, especially when it comes to gender equality in India, and that it's actually just the minorities who they feel are sometimes programmed not to trust what the BJP does. Do you agree with any of that perspective?
my simple point to this, Andrea, is that my point was with regard to the North Indian, South Indian differences and the non-applicability to tribal communities, which Mr. Mittal hasn't dealt with. I won't get into that. On the point of gender equality, there is nothing stopping this present government or any government from amending the Shariat Act. The Shariat Act of 1940, which governs the application of Islamic law to India, can be amended. It's just a 2-line amendment. All that needs to be done is to say that the devolution of property in under Islamic law shall happen 50-50 for men and women. Just one important conceptual difference is necessary here because this point was raised. Under Hindu law, a son or daughter now has a right to the property, has a share in the property, not just a right, a share in the property the moment they are born. This is not the case in Islamic law. In Islamic law, it's only when the person who owns the property dies does the son and daughter get a share. And the shares are different. I'm not saying that they're exactly the same. I think there's nothing preventing the government here from making an amendment to the Shariat
Okay.
Act to say they have done this also. They have abolished the triple talaq system. It was in furtherance of the judgment of the Supreme Court of India. So I believe there is, if I'm on the same page as Mr. Sudhanshu Mittal, that yes, all various laws are contrary to the interests of women. The amendment that needs to be made has to be made in accordance with like the concepts of that law. That's the important thing. We can't suddenly say Hindu law will now apply to Muslims. That is not how it can't be done. A couple of lines of amendment to the
Okay.
Shariat Act to say succession of property will happen in this way can be done.
Okay, I'd like to give equal time to everybody. Rabia, let me come back to you because, having so many different laws in so many states, it may seem chaotic, but given India's diversity, I mean, is it the best that India can actually do? I mean, you let the individual communities deal with their own codes, like we saw with the triple talaq divorce laws. That was an organic movement.
Yes, that was a phenomenal movement for the justification, and there have been instances where Muslim women were given were pronounced talaq through emails and through SMS, and it was a winning moment for Muslim women who had been fighting for this law. Can you repeat the question once again?
Yeah, I was just saying, that because from the outside, having so many different laws may seem chaotic, but actually in India's context, it works because there is so much diversity. It is the best they can do. What's wrong with that?
I think there's nothing of our country that we are so diverse and we have been living together since centuries, since ages. We have been living together, and that is the beauty of our country. I think together we should come together and we should see what solution we can provide to our society. And
Okay.
like like I said, to understand the Uniform Civil Code, as a citizen, it is our right to know what the government is going to implement. We need to see the blueprint before we go ahead and declare that it is against our society or it is going to unify our country.
Okay, Sudhanshu Mittal, I saw you are back. Address that if you can. I mean, that's what everyone keeps saying. We don't have this blueprint. We don't know exactly how this uniform law is supposed to work. Can you bring some clarity to that, or is it still for the courts and legislators to sort out?
No, it's nothing to do with the courts. Legislation is a part of the legislative framework of this country, which shall do it. I'm grateful to the young lady for being I would say, so, the thought process is so brilliant. I must compliment her. Without even knowing what is intended, there is rejection just because there is suspicion. He says, let us see what comes. Why should we be rejecting? Things could be progressive. Things could be as per the wishes of the Constitution, as per the provisions of the Constitution. So let us look at it. That is exactly what all of us have been saying.
Okay.
That this country needs to be run through the provisions of the Constitution in the spirit of what the Constitution, every citizen. Dowry was a menace. It is a menace for the Hindus, it is a menace for the Muslims, it is a menace for everybody. So there is ban on dowry. Sati was a menace. Sati has been banned. There have been so many progressive legislations which have been there, though they were practices of the past. But as Indians, as guided by the Constitution of this country, we shall not discriminate on the grounds of sex, caste, creed, and religion. Now, these are all things which are to be valued in the spirit. And
Okay.
that is why, for things which are enshrined in the Constitution, a common law should be made.
Alok,
Let the common law come first.
Are BJP critics then getting ahead of themselves?
I'd say all of this is wonderful. If the Uniform Civil Code, if there was at least a list of principles, all right, we'll get to the drafting later. If at least the BJP could come up with a list of principles by which the Uniform Civil Code, because the only stress that is laid, and here is where the discomfort comes. Let me point this out. The stress comes because the problem comes because stress is laid on the uniformity aspect of it and not on the reform aspect of it. Just to come back to something that you mentioned, in fact, even the rights of daughters first happened at the state levels. 5 different states provided these rights to the daughters, and then the union government made the change for a national level. Now, if there was a list of principles which said this is what a uniform civil code will be like, at least that can start a discussion, because I don't think we're even at the stage of a discussion. To me, it is unfortunate that everybody stresses on the uniform aspect of things, but not on the justice aspect of things. Yes, Mr. Sudhanshu Mittal has mentioned all of this, but this doesn't find mention in, say, the discussion which takes place in the context of the Uttarakhand government, which has set up a committee to draft it. What bothers a lot of people is that this is a law which will apply to all communities, and it is a committee composed of 5 Hindus. And to no disrespect to the members of the committee, but none of them are experts in Islamic law, none of them are experts in Christian law, none of them are experts on how tribal customs undertake. So which begs the question, is uniformity such an important value that everything else needs to be discarded? Or is it one value along with justice, fairness, equality, fair treatment, all of those other things? And we're not hearing the discussion on these other things.
I can give you 30 seconds, Sudhanshu. Please, just 30 seconds.
Mr. Alok doesn't seem to have read the Constitution. Article 44 outlines the need for uniform civil code, and it's a part of the directive principles to state policy. So justice, equality, these are the basic reasons why they have propounded the cause of uniform civil code.
Okay.
Alok ji, as an informed citizen, the skepticism or the cynicism with which You want to view everything which is a reform disappoints me. You are an
Okay, Sudhanshu Mittal, that will
before
have to be
condemn
the
in
last word, and unfortunately we're
contemptuous
losing your
to
connection
any
as
reform.
well. So I'd like to thank all three of my panelists really so much for being with us on this
contempt with
edition of
which
the
you are looking at
Newsmakers. Not
reforms
sure
is
he can hear me.
unfortunate.
And thank our viewers, of course, for watching as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.